Okay, so we are on the last leg of the infrared lecture. Can you believe it? And we've made it through the functional group detection. We've made it through a little bit of the history, not much, but enough to kind of give you a good feel of where this all began. And now we need to talk about the instrument itself. So in the next series of videos, we're going to be looking at the instrument pieces and parts. So this is what we did with UV, and we did a block diagram, and we labeled pieces and parts, and we talked about them in a little bit more detail. However, this section is going to go much quicker, because if you know it for UV vis, then you know it for infrared, because UV vis is a spectrophotometer, and infrared is a spectrophotometer. So because they're both spectrometers, then they both probably have similar pieces and parts, and they do. There's just a little bit of difference between them, and that's about it. All right, so in our schematic of the infrared, in the very beginning, well, just like with the UV vis, we have a light source. And we need to talk about what that light source is, because I guarantee you it's not deuterium and tungsten, because that was used for UV. Well, we're measuring in a different part of the spectrum now. So I'm probably not going to use either one of those bulbs. But we need to talk about the light source. All right, the light source is going to go through my sample. So I'll probably have a sample compartment. That's where I would put my sample to be analyzed. UV vis had it, infrared has it too. After the sample, well, we need something that's going to clean it up a little bit. And this is my monochromator. Whoa, I spelled that wrong, didn't I? Let me try that again. And the purpose of the monochromator is the exact same as the UV vis. We're going to see almost identical pieces that are there. Sometimes it's after the sample, sometimes it's before the sample, just like in the UV theory. After the monochromator, it then probably goes to some type of detection source. So we have a detector, the eyeball of the machine right here, like every spec. It's got to have something that it can see. And yes, that's supposed to be an eyeball. I know. I didn't go to school to be an artist. And then finally, we can take this signal and we can give it to some kind of computer software or some kind of amplifier that gives me a signal maybe on a computer screen or a recording device. All right? So light source, sample, monochromator, detector, and then the computer. Same pieces and parts really that we used before. There's no major differences at all. And just like with the UV vis instrument, we can have a single beam or we can have a double beam spectrometer. And the same setup exists. The light source can be split into two, and it goes through the sample and the blank at the same time. And this is what's called a double beam infrared spectrometer. Okay, so no big deal. Everything sounds familiar, hopefully at least. Hopefully none of those were new terms for you, because we talked about each and every one of them in the UV-Vis field. Here's a picture of our infrared spectrometer, one of our old ones at least. And this is a Buck Scientific unit. Buck Scientific is a instrumentation manufacturer. They do a lot of different types of instrumentation. And if I want to go to their website, it's typically Buck Sci, I believe. And Buck Scientific will basically sell academic grade equipment. This is something that you probably will not see major laboratories purchase or use unless they are really, really on a budget. But The Buck Scientific website does have a little bit of everything, and they're perfect for academic or teaching laboratories. So if I had a company and I wanted you to get trained on an infrared, I'm probably going to train you on something that can tear up, that we can fix pretty easily, and not our Lexus model or our Ferrari model, right? I'm going to give you kind of the run-of-the-mill infrared first. And that's what Buck Scientific is known for. So over here to the side, you'll see the different pieces of equipment that they offer. And chromatography will be coming up in a completely different course. But here you see infrared spectroscopy. All right. So if I click on the infrared spectroscopy link, this is going to take me to the IR page, and it gives me a couple of different ideas of things that I can do with their infrared spectrum, okay, or spectrometer. And it looks like now they have a little bit better upgraded model of infrared spectrometer for me. And it's the Buck M530. And I think we honestly have the 200 model number, not the 500 model number. And ours is beige. It looks just like what was on the PowerPoint here, but it looks like they got fancy and they got with the times and they tried to upgrade their model into something that's a little more streamlined and maybe a little prettier, depending on who you ask. Okay, but if you look at the cost, $10,500. And this is typically what we paid for the Buck scientific instruments that we have in our laboratory. We have a total of two of these. One is typically all that we need at any one time. So you'll often see us go to the same one over and over and over. But we do have two of these instruments that can run at one time. All right. So if I click the link for Buck M530 Quick Scan, I know it's not the same model, but it gives you an idea of the types of infrared spectrometers that they sell. So it looks like it does the ranges of 4,000 to 600 wave numbers, and that's exactly what I need. That's the traditional infrared spectrum. So that's really good. At least it gives me the right units to kind of play around with and to look for when I begin to analyze samples on them. And then more than that, it shows you what's underneath the front cover. And this is what I want to start showing you over and over when we talk about the pieces and parts for this piece of equipment. So underneath this cover, all of the boxes that we have drawn here are present, and you can see them, which is good, because we're going to talk about what they look like and where they're located, so that way you know what's happening underneath this cover. So that's to come. Pay attention, because that's probably going to be a test question. You know that that's coming up, right? Here's a picture, label the pieces and parts of the actual instrument itself. Okay? Now, the other instrument that we have for our infrared, that's an upgraded model. And that upgraded model can be found on Shimadzu's website. Shimadzu, Shimadzu. All right, Shimadzu is very similar to Buck. They do a little bit of everything here. However, they are more analytical grade and they are more research grade. What that means is that these are the instruments that you would see in industry, that you would actually work and actually use. All right. So here under products, I'm going to go into analytical and measuring instruments because that's what we are. They do a little bit of everything, if you notice, even aircraft equipment, for goodness sakes. But we'll go into their scientific field. And under their scientific tab, you're going to see a couple of different pieces of instrumentation that's listed. Okay? Up here at the top of the screen, you're going to see a product tab. And under the product tab, you will see a whole slew of different types of equipment that they have and that they sell. For us, we need to go into the spectroscopy field and not the chromatography field like you see over there. And under the spectroscopy field, you will begin to see their UV vises that they sell, and you will also see their FTIR. And the IR stands for infrared, of course, but we've not really talked about what the FT stands for yet, and we will, because this is an instrument that you would see, and it is an instrument that we have that really sets us apart. So we'll talk about FTIR, what that is and what that means, but it gives you a picture of the FTIR systems. We have the IR Affinity 1S. This is the exact machine that we have, and then we'll talk about how to use it and how is it different, if any, and why this might be preferred, if it is, versus the traditional infrared machines. Okay? So that's a little bit about the product lines that we have. Of course, there's other ones out there that make FTIR. These are not the only two, but these are the two that we have in our laboratory, and those are the ones that we'll focus on.